A warm greeting, my dear developers. Let's continue learning about a Next.js React framework that will allow us to use the power of server-side rendering in our own apps without having to do it manually. And of course, that framework is called Next.js. Let's begin by understanding what Next.js actually is. So, according to Vercel, that is the company that is behind Next.js, Next.js is the React framework for the web. First of all, we can say that Next.js is a meta framework. Meta framework built on top of React. We still use components, props, React, hooks, and so on. So it's a meta framework built on the top of React. Here is React, and Next.js was built on the top. So meta because if we consider React itself a framework, then Next.js is a framework on top of another framework. Yes? And this is actually becoming quite common in web development these days. Now, the fact that Next.js is built on top of React means that, of course, we get to use all the things from React that we already know. So, things like components, props, React hooks, and so on are still important in the world of Next.js. Now, what Next.js adds on top of all that is a set of conventions and best practices about common things that we usually always need to implement in any real-world application. So, things like routing, data fetching, and a bunch of other stuff that we'll see very soon. Because of this, we say that the framework is opinionated, yes? Opinionated way of building React apps, set of convention and best practices regarding routing, data fetching, and etc. Because these conventions are based on what the engineers and Vercel who built the framework came up with. So we can, for example, not implementing routing in any way we want. We have to learn and follow the way things work in Next.js. But that's actually a great thing because this way we can avoid writing so much repeated code and just start building our app features right away. Plus, having a fixed set of rules makes building apps as a team a lot easier. Because if everyone knows Next.js and follows the same standards, then application will get built faster with fewer bugs and with a much better developer experience. So, in the end, as a result of all this, Next.js allows us to build complex full stack, yes, web apps and sites with React, complete with data fetching and data mutations on the server, as we will see it. Next.js implement all the cutting-edge React features like React server components, server actions, suspense, and many more that are nearly impossible for us to use without them being integrated into a framework. Yes? Those features that needing to be integrated into our NextJS framework, suspend and server and so on. All these pieces are actually part of the React team's full stack architecture vision, which again needs to be implemented by Next.js. Next.js implemented React Server component and really makes this awesome new feature available to all React developers. Now that we know what Next.js is, let's dive a bit deeper and take a look at the main things that Next.js actually brings to the table. Okay, first of all, as we have studied, server-side render. Yes, that is the first key, the first ingredient that makes Next different from all. As we've talked about before, and remember, as we mentioned in the previous class, Next.js supports both dynamic and static rendering. Yes, which we can basically select for each route. It's to be selected for each route. Now, to navigate through the application, Next.js comes with a router out of the box, or actually even two routers, as we'll see it. And what is special about this router is that routes are defining entirely based on file system based conventions. For example, we create a basic route in our Next.js API app simply by creating a new folder with the route name. And that's it. Yes? Folders as route. The only thing that we need to do is to create a basic route by creating a new folder. And that's it, no more. No need to write any code. And this was really a game changer when Next.js was first introduced. Special file for pages, layout, etc. There are also special file conventions for pages, layouts, errors, loading screens, and so on. And now probably the most important part is that Next.js give us the ability to fetch and mutate data right from the server by using those React Server components. And server actions too, that we will examine them later. By implementing React Server components and server actions, data fetching and mutations are now possible to execute within a React app running on a server. Yes, you hear good. We are going to use React into Next.js, fetching data directly in server components. Okay? So that is it's possible the most important key, data fetching and mutation on the server. And finally, Next.js provides us with a host of optimization techniques for our apps. Yes, those optimizations, and especially for websites where they are particularly important. So this is stuff like automatic route preloading, images, fonts, and SEO, both of which bring huge performance gains and also tools for improving search engine optimization. And as I mentioned earlier, there are actually two routers in Next.js. Yes, those are the app router and the pages router. And these two routers are basically two completely different ways of building Next.js applications. They are almost like two completely separate frameworks. So, the modern way of writing Next.js apps is by using the app router. Yes? They have two options, different alternatives, but the modern way is using app router, modern Next app router, which became stable in 2023. I lost the last number 3, but it's 2023, and is now the recommending way of starting new projects. Rather than legacy Pages router, the first Next.js router since 2016. That's because this is the router, talking about app router, that implements the React team's full stack architecture vision that we have talked about a few times so far. So again, that's the cutting edge React features like server components and actions, suspense, streaming, and so on. So all these are only available in the modern app router. In other words, we can use all those features, adding cutting edge features without a app router. Yes? The Pages router is the legacy router, and we can use them using Pages router. This legacy router, the Pages router, is no longer recommended for new projects. Still supported and updated in the future, but is not recommended for new projects. We are gonna learn to app router from the very beginning. In the app router, on the other hand, we can just use the fetch function that we already know in order to fetch data in any server component that we want. Yes? Implement React's full stack architecture, server components, and easy fetching with fetch right in components, which is pretty awesome, as you will see soon. It's also extremely easy to implement layouts, error banderings, loading states, and so on. But in legacy Pages router, simple things like layouts are confusing implemented. So Pages router is pretty confused. I don't like it. But using app router, layouts and pages and routes is very easy, pretty easy. And on top of that, the app router allows for some pretty advanced routed patterns like parallel routing and intercepting routes, plus building apps in this new paradigm give us a significantly better developers experience and even user experience, especially because we have server components now, which makes building Next.js apps really fun. It's clear app router is better than Pages router, but however, not everything is great. So the most annoying thing about the app router is without adapt the super aggressive caching, which is not only really confusing and hard to understand, but even worse, many times does things that we actually don't want. Now, this is caching and getting better, but for now, working with and around NextJS caching mechanisms is a huge pain point. That is the truth, to tell you the truth. Also, the learning curve for the new app router is significantly faster than in the page router. As the simple introduction in NextJS, we found this. So in the next session, we are going to continue setting up the NextJS. God bless you.